Oh, yeah, sorry, what was the name of the
Hi,
woman?
so I'm Rebecca.
Okay,
I'm the project manager for the Dartmouth Park Community Conversations project. Nice to meet you all.
And do you work with urban outfitters at all?
Yes, sorry. So Urban Movement is the company that I work for. I'm a design engineer there. We put together this list of rules for what our discussions with people, what we understand to be the sort of rules that any scheme, any project in the area would need to meet to be successful, for people to like it, for it to meet the overcome the issues that people talked about.
Have you involved people with disabilities at all?
So not specifically would be my answer. We have had a couple of people at the sessions who do use wheelchairs.
Why haven't you asked people disability or disabled? Why haven't you asked them for? Why haven't you worked with them properly?
Well, I suppose I look to the forum for the kind of list of people to engage with, I suppose. But I think I would admit that it's not a group that we particularly identified as a kind of specific group of people to speak with. I suppose we were thinking more broadly of just residents in the area. But I take your point.
Stream. So you're more into people with mainstream. What you're
not at all.
That's how it sounds.
Well, I'm sorry. I'm really sorry that that's how that comes across. That is definitely not our intention at all. That's why I was really pleased to hear from Tom via Carl about your group, and I was really keen to speak to you and to give you a direct forum to give me your thoughts, because I am really interested in what you have to say. I think a thing to keep in mind with the project, just to give you a bit of background, is that this is just an initial community conversation with people. We're not putting forward any proposals for the area, any designs or anything like that. So you haven't missed out having your say on any proposals or anything like that. We won't be building anything. So in that sense, this isn't the only chance to have your say, I suppose. If the council did go ahead with any proposal in the area, there would obviously be statutory consultation. And I would definitely hope through your streets access co-production team that this is something the council would work with you directly on as well. So the first thing is to remove, so one of the issues that people brought up was there was a lot of traffic in the area. And so one of the rules we wanted to say was to make it more difficult for vehicles to run through the area, and basically limit the number of vehicles that can come through the area. So make it a much more quieter and more peaceful neighbourhood.
I disagree with that rule, because I've noticed over the whole of Camden, if you stop cars cutting through, there's not many places you can cut through now in this area, because they've put those little stupid things, those square things, and if you drive through them, you have to pay a fine. I disagree with it, because you have to do shortcuts because there's no other way to go. And some people have phobias over those little things you all keep putting up in the road to slow the traffic down. I'm one of them. So if you used to cut part of the road off with to slow the traffic down, I wouldn't be able to go home because I couldn't drive through those things.
One thing to consider is that I suppose with this is that a lot of people do drive who don't need to drive currently. I completely take your point that some people do need to drive, and that is absolutely fair enough. I suppose the aim of this kind of rule, I suppose, is that it discourages people from taking the car for short journeys, but it doesn't stop people taking from driving if they need to. Yeah, and if we do get fewer people driving, then it may be more likely that there's less congestion on the roads, and so the people that need to use their car can still, with hopefully less delay. That's the idea, at least.
But I thought mainly people use their cars for extremely short journeys. Most people drive to go, really very, very small areas of space. That's why many people drive, not for big journeys, but just maybe to go to the local shops.
Yeah, that's very common. It's true.
And Camden's main policy is to cut pollution, to
That's
cut
right.
car usage, you know.
One of the things that was really key was that people were clear that they didn't want other streets in the area to be negatively affected. So if any roads were closed to stop traffic going all the way through, it would need to be so that there wasn't another road that they could easily cut down instead. And the idea behind that is kind of keeping Dartmouth Park as one neighbourhood and not kind of divided into areas where there's loads of traffic and areas where there's very little traffic. So it's kind of about equality, I suppose, if that makes sense. So between
would that involve Croftdown Road as well?
Yes, it would. Is that the street that you live on?
Yes, we don't want nobody to touch that road. You can't actually make, if you was to block, because you know that's a really long, boring road. So if you was to block it off in a low traffic, I live in the middle.
Mm-hmm.
So say it's blocked off up the top, I'll have to go all the way around the houses to park.
I suppose, I mean, just to say that as part of this, we haven't come up with any designs or proposals. So I'm not suggesting that we would close off Croftdown Road. I can't say what Camden Council would do, of course. But I suppose the idea is that, you know, if we were to close any street, you know, the council would need to carefully consider that traffic wouldn't just go on another road.
Well, if traffic's going to be cut in one area, it's inevitable that it is going to move into another area because people still have to get from A to B, and they'll just kind of do diversions, won't they, to get to what's cut off, I suppose.
I think it's sort of like what we were saying just now, is that a lot of people do drive for unnecessarily short journeys, and those journeys could be switched to other modes. So I suppose the idea is that if you do make it more difficult to drive, a lot of people will decide to travel by a different mode. So it's not that the number of journeys made by car will always stay the same. It's research has shown that it can reduce as a result of kind of making it a little bit harder to drive.
Yeah, but you know, you say that, right? In this neighbourhood, there are people in wheelchairs and stuff like that. And if you block off those roads, and what's coming across to me, you don't want really us to use our cars, but it should be our choice. Even if the shop is down the bottom of the hill, some of us can't walk up that hill again or cycle up that hill. So we have to use our cars. So it doesn't really make sense.
Well, I completely see your point there. I think what I'm trying to say, I suppose, is that it's not that any of this is like anti-car or anything like that. It's more that, and we're very keen to emphasize that it's not that we'd be stopping anybody from driving anywhere. It's just that some journeys may take maybe a slightly longer if there were any closures, but obviously I'm not proposing any actual changes.
So won't that make the pollution come out more if we have to drive further then? That'll make more pollution, won't it? If you've got to drive. Yes, it does. Well, if you've got to drive round the bit you've blocked off, of course it will make more pollution because you're in your car longer to get to the place that you was trying to get to in the first place when it would have been shorter.
But I suppose the overall aim is that the number of people driving would reduce. So the knock-on effect would be that overall the amount of pollution would be less. So one of the rules was we need to ensure that everyone can access their property by car. That's one of the rules. So everyone will be able to drive to their house, whatever route that may be. And sort of related to that is that any scheme we have shouldn't have a poor impact on people that need to reach healthcare. So that's partly related to emergency services being able to get to people's houses, and partly related to people needing to drive to the doctor or the dentist or wherever. So those two things are related, I suppose. And I would say that they tie in with the concerns you were raising.
So far, everything is about the motorist, the primacy of the driver. So far, that's what I'm a bit not happy about.
Well, let me,
but it's primarily the driver, everything else like an afterthought. Oh yes,
Well, that's
is
I'm
prime.
happy to tell you more of the rules that do address what you're talking about. The reason I mentioned those ones first was because issues around traffic and air pollution were big ones that people brought up. But you're quite right. So there are issues around, as you say, crossing the road. And one of the rules we wanted was better facilities for people walking. So that's better crossings where they're needed, wider pavements, and particularly where at the moment they're too narrow for people that with buggies or people that use wheelchairs.
Well, it should be for everybody, even car drivers and the public walking people and the cyclists. It should be equal. I actually do agree with, because I know it's not in, I don't know about Dartmouth, right? I do agree with no parking on the pavement, because there is a street where they do park on the pavement and it is very tiny to actually get on the road. But that's a bit, but I don't know what road that is, but it's probably one of your roads.
Chetwynd Road it is, yeah.
Yeah, that's it. It's a bit dangerous there because the pavements are not that good. And then the cars are parked on the pavement. You can't, you have to walk single file. You can't get through, not even with a buggy, really.
No, you'd struggle, I think.
So I agree with that bit, but I think that we should learn to share the roads. And yes, there should be places for people to cross, because up the top of Croftdown Road to get to the shops, it's very complicated to get across the road.
So we're one of the rules was that we should look at school street measures for all schools in the neighbourhood. And a school street, I don't know if you've heard of one before, but basically that's temporarily restricting cars from going down a street outside a school and outside a school entrance for a short period of time in the morning and in the evening. So looking at that at not just schools in Dartmouth Park, but further afield as well, to try and discourage parents from driving their children to school. And there's also exemptions for blue badge holders and residents that need to access their properties on that street too. So if you need to use your car as a mobility aid and to get to school or drop your children to school, you'd also be allowed to drive down the street.
So it's a good idea. So the people that actually live in that street or outside that school, they do have their cars parked there. So would they still be allowed to park there because they're residents?
Yes.
But then I agree with it then, because sometimes when you're going up there, when you try to drive up there to go somewhere else, like I have to go to take somebody somewhere, you can't get through because there's parked cars in the middle of the road. So I agree with you.
It's a nightmare, and you've got 2 schools on your street, haven't you?
Yeah.
So you know it more than anybody.